Seedtime and Harvest is law.
Perception is reality. Perspective shapes the world around you. I'm JJ Weinberg, and this is my perspective.
Greetings and salutations. My name is JJ Weinberg. I'm an artist, an activist, an alchemist, a musician, a radio host, a podcaster, and I'm none of these things. Well, how could I be none of these things if I'm talking to you on the radio, if I'm talking to you through a podcast? The point of me saying that, as I say it at the beginning of every episode here, is to give you a little context, a little bit of a frame on places I've been and things I've done. But I want to always remind myself never to be arrested by definitions. These definitions can become a cage. So, welcome to Perspective. This is my perspective. Hopefully now in 2026, I'm going to be able to start getting some guests on sometime soon. I share a lot of other perspectives of people I've read and people I've been influenced by, but, having some guests on will be fun. I want to start by thanking everybody at WVLP. Greg, I want to thank Paul Schreiner for putting me up to this task of putting this show together. It's been a really cool journey so far. And I definitely have to thank the underwriters for this program, Voga, Barnes, and Denny. And specifically, of course, my good friend John Voga over there at Voga, Barnes, and Denny. So last week, I talked about how I'm a billionaire. I got some billionaire friends. And if you didn't get to catch that episode, check it out. But it was a question that just arrived in my mind one day. I was like, I wonder how many times my heart has beat. So I did like some averages with resting heart rate and knowing I exercise and all that type of stuff. And it came up with, approximately, 1.5 billion beats, give or take. And I thought about that and said, well, what's a heartbeat worth? And imagine you're with someone and you just wanted another 2 minutes. Another 2 minutes at the end of your life. Another 2 minutes with someone you love that you just want to share one more thing, one more moment. And if it's 60 beats per minute, if that's a resting heart rate, then you're looking at 120 beats for those 2 minutes. And the question came to mind, how much is a heartbeat worth monetarily? If you quantified it into dollars and cents, those last 2 minutes, would you pay $1 a beat? So $120 to be able to get those 2 minutes? To be able to get those 2 minutes to share your vision, your life, whatever it might be. $120, would it be worth $2 a beat? $240? I mean, it's priceless, right? And just this idea that our heartbeat is a constant. It's at the back of life itself. I have another episode of Perspective, I think, where I was talking about that way before doing the radio show, talking about how we don't beat our heart and we don't consciously do it, but it's at the back of what, has us survive. We can't even choose if we don't want our heart to beat, specifically like the actual muscle and the organ. Anyway, there's a lot of rich metaphor there. And, our heart is where we love from. Metaphorically, we talk about the metaphorical heart. The physical heart is giving out an electromagnetic frequency that goes out beyond our body. And our heart is where our dreams are and our love is. So just take note of your heart and realize you too are a billionaire on your way to being a billionaire. If you're a little bit younger, But this episode, it kind of got derailed. I was really inspired thinking about this idea of seed time and harvest. And this was probably a couple of months ago. I started writing notes for this show and this idea and contemplating the notion of seed time and a harvest in a way that I haven't before. And then, life happens and went down a couple of different paths, but I want to come back to it now, especially as we're into March. We're getting ready, for the spring. And it's an exciting time. Equally exciting, before I move into the seed time and harvest, is the reality that I got a lot of music recorded in February. And I hadn't really written a song in a decade. And I had a friend, a very special person, come into my life after not having spoke in decades. And I started sharing my music again because I got to share this. I was catching up and learning about one another. And it's here's some music, listen to this old stuff. And then I kind of started to get the bug. I started to get the itch to share music again from my past. And then it was wait a second, some of these songs were never recorded. It's been a decade since I've really written any music, but I also have these songs that some of them were 25 years old that were never recorded. And I'm now how do I share this, And so that's kind of what got me started, was going into wanting to be able to share these older songs and realizing all the different technologies and things I have at my fingertips now and the opportunities. In 2015, I stumbled upon this community on the internet. It's FAWM.org, February Album Writing Month. And when I found it in 2015, I was whoa, this is crazy. That was when I was really in the height of my writing music, writing songs, doing stuff with my band, the Energy Commission. And so I was, I'd already put my 10,000 hours in on songwriting, and I was just really in stride. So I stumble on this community, and the idea is it's a challenge for you to write 14 songs in 28 days. Because, February is a shorter month. And I was all right, let's do it. And it's squeezed so many incredible things out of me because when you don't have time to stop and just completely labor over things, you just have to let the subconscious speak. It really starts to pull out things because of the time, the pressure, and the constraints. And when you've been practicing something that long, it really can help, because it takes out a lot of times, I think, the analytic thinking part of it and just really gets you into the spirit. So in 2015, I wrote 14 songs in 28 days. It was incredible. I mean, all the way up to the last day, I was writing a song about love and the train. And I was on the train riding into Chicago to do an interview on WBEZ about music, about, the band was having a show, I think at the Metro or the House of Blues or something. And I was riding in on the train with my pink ukulele, writing a song on the train about writing a song on the train. It was pretty phenomenal. But again, that wouldn't have happened if I just didn't have the constraint, if I just didn't put myself to task because of this community. So fast forward to 2026, and February 1st, I get an email in my inbox from FAWM.org. And I'm oh man, I had to see it on February 1st. That, to me, that was the sign. I'm okay, now you got to do it. You're seeing it on the first day of the month. You're not going to be missing any days because it's tough, to try and do this challenge. And so I started writing on February 1st, and I have some really great songs now from my experience, from my life, from things that are happening right now. and it's beautiful. And I can't wait to share some of them. I'll share them here on Perspective. And I really have no expectation. I'm not, I'm not looking to be a rock star and doing the stage shows and all of that stuff anymore. It's just really cool to have some songs that add to my legacy, and I want to share them. I want to share them with you, and hopefully they resonate, and you might want to share them along as well. But so that being said, February album writing month. I also, if you were looking on my Instagram, if you're not following me on Instagram, please do. It's just at JJ Weinberg. And the way I treat my Instagram is really like an extension of my website and kind of a portfolio extension of who I am and what I'm doing. And I usually post not as often because it's so deliberate, but I wanted to make sure for Black History Month for February to try and make a post every single day. And I was able to accomplish that. So if you want to go and check out some of my work there and the series that I've been developing since 2018 called A Well-Regulated Militia, most everything that I posted last month has that theme behind it. All of that said, we're going to get into today, Seedtime and Harvest. I've talked on the show before about Neville Goddard. He is kind of a Christian metaphysician, and we've talked about the crystal. We've talked about the field, the frequency, Rumi. He says out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. And we've talked about the law, all of these different things. And I've talked about, kind of the woo-woo of law of attraction, the socks and sandals hippy-dippy version that, gives the idea of the law of attraction kind of a bad name. And I want to go deeper into, I think, something that's wildly misunderstood. Even the notion of law of attraction, just the other day I had this thought and was probably going to put it into a future episode, so I'll mention it now. The idea that you're attracting and pulling something from outside of you is erroneous. It's you are the thing. It's like a fish. It's like a goldfish in a bowl. You know what I mean? You're surrounded and inside of the water, and the universe isn't outside of you. You're inside of it and it's outside of you. It's complete. And so law of attraction in some manner isn't you pulling stuff from outside of you. It's a manifestation from inside by the seeds that you plant. And that's what we're going to talk about here, because somewhere along the line, this idea just got turned into a cartoon, a caricature, whimsical, tree-hugging, hocus-pocus version that sounds, I hate to say that it sounds magical, as I love the idea of magic. But when people denigrate it and turn it into Lamborghini, 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 and poof, there's a Lamborghini in your driveway, like that kind of stuff, that's this snake oil version. Low-hanging fruit that people are baited into, again, wanting to manifest something outside of themselves. So it becomes profitable for new age profiteers, not prophets. Profit. That's one of my relativity of word things. That of course is yet another episode. A word that I coined the other day. Actually, I'm going to talk about that one right now because we'll do this on the relativity of words episode. But I coined this word the other day, tesseraction. And if you Google tesseraction, you'll find like there's some books, like science fiction books or something, but I hadn't Googled it yet. And I just was thinking about the idea of a tesseract, the fourth dimension. And I was thinking about how for the longest time I've called love a superverb. On the show, the first episode of the show, I talked about how gratitude isn't a feeling, it's a decision. And coining this word, J.J. Weinberg, 21st century, if you look at it in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, it will say, from tesseract, four-dimensional cube, and action, to denote conscious decision understood as a higher dimensional human act. So, as a noun, tesseract, an enacted conscious decision, the act by which a human being chooses alignment in such a way that it becomes a moment crystallized across time and perspective. Second part would be a decisive action that establishes a coherent pattern across multiple possible timelines. Fourth dimensional act in which intention, meaning, and discipline are expressed as lived reality. The third part of the definition would be the act of collapsing possibility through awareness and choice, where the observer's perspective shapes experience and influences subsequent perception, memory, and behavior. And so tesseract, even as a verb, would be to choose and enact a state of meaning or alignment, to perform a conscious decision that holds significance intact across changing circumstances. So, forgiveness, gratitude, and belief are not feelings, but tesseractions, decisions that altered the course of experience. So, as a usage note, tesseraction treats decision as an action, not as intention or preparation. It emphasizes the human capacity to shape experience through conscious choice, aligning with philosophical views of a person as a deciding being. And we've talked about that so many times here, that Viktor Frankl says that a human being is a deciding being. Love is a clear example. The category is conscious deciding itself. Love, gratitude, forgiveness, faith, creation are instances of tesseraction. Because a decision is an action, not a prelude to an action, not a thought experiment. It's an action. And most language treats decisions as mental events and actions as physical events. But this framework collapses that false divide. So it's not that a decision leads to crystallization. It's that decision itself is the crystallizing act. From now, the only time that we have. And I talked about this, I think, in a previous episode or two. Now is our time. Now is our only time. The past, it's not our time. The future, it's not our time. This is the only time that we get right now. And when we realize that the decision itself is the crystallizing act, that creates the pattern that is the crystal. We show up to now in our pattern as the crystal, not as an outside discipline, again, not as a law of attraction outside and pulling things in, but what I'm building from the inside, from the seed of my decision. And so the crystal shows up in the moment as a pattern of molecules, but the pattern is like a map. That's our internal map. So this is the tesseraction. I just wanted to make sure and bring it up here. We'll talk about it more in the future for sure. That doesn't exist. But yes, a tesseraction. Love is a tesseraction. Gratitude, a tesseraction. Forgiveness, for sure, a tesseraction. We open a portal we set down an access point. When we love someone deeply enough, we place an access point that becomes a portal that we can travel. Trust me when I tell you, you could travel over a gap of 32 years if you set that access point down. That may be revealed later, but for now, just know your love is a tesseraction. So we're talking about the Seedtime and Harvest, the crystal, thinking from the end. I've talked about that, of course, consistency being the crystal. Crystal is a repeated pattern that manifests as a physical object. Tesseraction, the fourth dimension brought to the third dimension, structure made visible. It's invisible order made into form. So if you see yourself clearly enough, if you see the future you as a crystal, you think from the end, that vision creates the map of consistency. So discipline feels forced when it's the illusion of it coming from outside pressure. But when discipline comes from the crystal, from identity, it doesn't feel forced. It becomes inevitability. It becomes who you are. People misunderstand this. They think manifestation means effortlessness. They think it means sitting on the couch and chanting about a Lamborghini. But if the words, I am wealthy, in whatever capacity truly moved you, if they truly changed your identity, then your actions would change automatically in the moment, in that now, because boom, that's who you are, who I am. It's not the words that manifest, it's the identity shift. We did an episode called I Am versus Me. The me is that small ego. The I am is the identity. When Muhammad Ali said, I am the greatest, he didn't say it and sit on the couch, right? He made an I am declaration because of the crystal inside that he held. There's another quote from Ali. He says, I don't count my sit-ups. I only start counting when it starts hurting, when I feel pain. That's when I start counting because that's when it really counts. He also said he hated all those sit-ups, right? But it didn't matter if he hated them. It wasn't outside discipline. It was the greatest doing sit-ups. So sometimes maybe Cassius Clay didn't want to do the sit-ups, but Muhammad Ali did them. That's the Seedtime and Harvest. So when Ali says, I am the greatest, that means every ab workout, every sprint, every shadow boxing, every repetition in the dark gym is inevitable because the identity demands it. So that's not hocus pocus. That's law. I actually talked about, again, I told you for Black History Month, I did a lot of posters, a really good post about Muhammad Ali as well in my Black History Month posts on Instagram, or if you follow me on Facebook, you can go back and look at them. But you should definitely check that out. So moving on, there's this biblical injunction, Galatians 6:7, and we've talked here so many times. I don't want to talk about dogma on this show. In my life, I don't talk about dogma. And in fact, as I've said before, in my music and some of my art, this project I did collaborating with Val Kilmer's God Panels, I say that we most often get God wrong through our dogma. But if you reflect on dogma, if you look backwards or back on the word dogma, you see it say, if you hold it in the mirror for reflection and introspection, you hear it and see it and read it say, am God. That can't be a sheer coincidence. The dogma leads us outwardly away. The am God brings us back to I am. And so Galatians 6:7, again, not from a dogmatic perspective, but from a religious perspective, to understand that, we would want to understand the meaning of the word religion, which is actually the root, the etymology is religario, which translates to realign. Realign with what? Our crystalline self, our I am, right? And so Galatians 6:7, as you sow, so shall you reap. You reap what you sow. Seedtime and harvest. You reap what you sow, not what you wish for, not what you chant about, not what you post about on social media, what you sow. Brings us back to Viktor Frankl. Human being is a deciding being. We decide. Between stimulus and response, there's a space, and that space is our power. And we cast spells on ourselves with words, spells, spelling, right? But those words can move us to action. Matthew 7:16 in the Bible says, you will know a tree by its fruit. Fruit reveals the root. So if you say you're planting apple seeds, but your fruit is deadly nightshade, guess what? The root tells the truth. You were planting deadly nightshade. And we do that. We do that with our words, with what we're casting on social media, with the way we talk to people in our families or in the restaurant or at the grocery store. We plant deadly nightshade all the time. The Seedtime and Harvest is why it's just a perfect metaphor for the manifestation loop. If you want to feel the crops, you must plant. You have to dig. You have to get dirt under your fingernails. What is it that you believe in? Your dream, whatever it might be. You're an artist, a musician. You want to start a business, start a family, love, all of this stuff. You got to get dirt under your fingernails. It's not, that's why the woo-woo manifestation thing throws everything off. It's not you just sit there and say it. If you believe it, it's going to crystallize in you. You have to sweat. You have to labor. And that's where people get confused. Because labor, even in of itself, right? We've all heard that phrase, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? That doesn't mean you don't labor. I love what I do. I love this. I love talking and doing this show. But it's still, there's parts of it that I'm like, man, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to sit there and get all the levels right, hook up the mics. I don't want to, do the YouTube thumbnails and all the stuff that you have to do. That's the work. But it's not just going to happen because I close my eyes and say I like it and want to do it. But when I love what I do, I'm aligned with my crystalline self. That means that the labor is aligned with identity. So if you think about Michael Jordan, practice wasn't optional. Kobe Bryant didn't think that repetition was optional. Ali didn't think that crunches were optional. It was work. And work was the goal because that was the manifestation. That was planting the seeds. So the seed in the dark, that's where it goes. We dig, then we plant. You have to bury the seed. And that's one of the places that these charlatans of New Age manifestation selling books, they miss it. You bury it in the dark. And the seed, it doesn't crack open in the sunlight. It cracks open underground in the darkness, in the pressure. A lot of times in isolation, in silence. That doesn't sound like Lamborghini Magic. That's a good song, Lamborghini Magic. It sounds like pain. And the seed itself has to die. Talk about this many times over. To conquer death, you only have to die. But whenever we change form, we die. We die to an old form. And so that seed has to die. It has to crack. And Khalil Gibran in The Prophet writes about that. My favorite book of all time. I'll talk about it here, talk about it a million times over. If you've never read The Prophet, do yourself a favor, go get it, buy it, and read it. And if you have read it, guess what? Do yourself a favor and read it again, because the book changes over time because you change over time. But Khalil Gibran writes about the shell of understanding cracking open, that our understanding has to crack open. The seed has to break to become more. To conquer death, we only have to die. That means we change form. And the cracking is where beauty is born. The breaking, ironically, is where the flowering begins. And one of my favorite people, I've actually had him on my podcast years ago. His name is Jeff Thompson. He's a BAFTA-winning playwright. He's got a film about his life that was from one of his screenplays that he wrote that actually has Orlando Bloom stars in it. It's amazing. I mean, Jeff is just an amazing guy, but there's a story. He talks about planting bamboo in his garden. And he was trying to get this bamboo out of a pot to plant it in his garden. But when bamboo grows in a pot, its roots become root bound. They wrap themselves around the pot. They wrap around themselves. They start growing in circles. And essentially they suffocate in their own limitation because, you know, they can't grow. It can't grow anymore because it runs out of sustenance. And so Jeff's telling the story about when he goes to cut it out with a knife, he imagines that the bamboo might be thinking, oh, he's going to hurt us. He's going to kill us. He's coming at us with a knife. And here's the bamboo saying this. But as he articulates in this podcast, he's not hurting it. It seems like that to the bamboo, but he's actually freeing it. And sometimes what feels like harm to us is actually liberation. Sometimes the knife is mercy. So he cuts the bamboo free, he plants it in the ground, and now it can reach its maximum potential for growth. Because now its roots can go deep, its stalk can grow high, and when the wind challenges it, you know, Jeff was like, oh, we got to do something. She says, no, you let the wind help it find its strength. Even then, the wind isn't cruelty. The wind is development. And so this is part of, it just made me think of that when I was thinking about this Seedtime and Harvest. But the cracking and the sprout, like under the soil, unseen, is where the seed cracks. And then it starts to push upward toward the harvest we saw in vision, toward the field. We talked about this many times here, Rumi. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. That field is abundance. It's that painting I did for my dad. I named it Field of Dreams. And it's like not so much even just a specific field as in a place, but a magnetic field, a field of love. The Upanishads say from abundance is taken and abundance still remains. Abundance does not believe in scarcity, and that's planting our seeds. We have to go against that temptation that there's scarcity. But if you lack faith and you dig up the seed to check on it, you start thinking, oh man, I don't know. It's under the ground. It's in that dark space. Nobody knows. Nobody knows about the seeds that I planted. You know, as an artist, as a musician, creative, an author, all the different things that I've done, I've planted so many seeds. The field, when my field comes to full harvest, I just, that's what keeps me going, is the notion of the abundance that will come from it. But there are so many seeds that I've planted in the dirt that people don't know about. They don't know. But I know it's growing because I know the law. I know how the law works. And that's where, when we talk about the law of attraction, we talk about actual law, there is a seed time and a harvest. If you do all of the things to tend, it is law that these things have to manifest. It isn't whimsy. It's science. Manifestation in this regard is science. It's cultivation. But if you don't see the evidence, you're like, oh, how do I know it's growing? If you don't know this law, you start to go down and dig to pull it up to see if it's cracked open, if it's actually working, then you destroy it. You destroy all the progress you've made. You destroy the seed. And that's, again, why I bring up Neville Goddard. Because he talks so much about this in a really articulate manner if you want to look at his book, Seedtime and Harvest. But if you interrupt the cycle, basically, you just have to reset the whole process. But if you can wait, if you have patience and know that one day a tiny green sprout will pierce the soil, then you have something. But even then when that miracle happens because of that seed that you planted, people around you will look at it and say, oh, that's nothing. It's just a green little seedling. What is that? This is just a little sprout. That's nothing. But you know, because you've seen the harvest before you planted it. And so as I was thinking about this Seedtime and Harvest and these different allegories, these different ideas, I realized that the subconscious is the soil. The subconscious. We don't get to meet our subconscious many times. I've talked about it here before. We'll talk about it more again in other episodes about the notion of the lucid dream. It's something I've been fascinated with. I've only had a handful of lucid dreams my whole life. And I think if you've had a lucid dream, it can be terrifying because it's like as if you're really awake, sleeping right now as you're awake. It's a phenomenal experience. But in a lucid dream, it's the only time that the subconscious and the conscious really, really genuinely get to meet. Because your dream is happening in the subconscious. But then you all of a sudden have autonomy and your subconscious starts talking to your conscious. That's why it's so fascinating when it happens. Because the notion of the subconscious, of course, is that it's below our conscious level. And that's why therapy helps us, kind of access. And that's why language matters. Again, we casting spells. When we're casting spells, when we're using our language, when we're talking about I am, when we're saying these repetitions, we're sending things down into the subconscious. And that's why we have to be mindful of the spells that we're casting. But subconscious this is the deeper layer. So the subconscious is the soil. There's the Hermetic proverb, as above, so below. The microcosm and the macrocosm, the individual, the earth, the universe, the divine, interconnected, reflecting the same patterns. This is originating from the emerald tablet. So it signifies the spiritual realms manifesting in physical reality. You have the law of correspondence, signifies that laws of physics and energy and spirituality, they apply universally, whether on a cosmic scale or in daily life. And then you have as within, so without. Your inner world creates your outer world. You are the cause. You are the tesseraction. So whether we're talking about the emerald tablets or Jesus saying in Luke 8:17, for nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. What is planted below will show above. We talked about the roots and the fruit. The soil doesn't care what you plant. Plant deadly nightshade. Jeff Thompson again talks about this a lot. Plant deadly nightshade, you get deadly nightshade. Plant apple seeds, you get apples. You can't plant poison and expect fruit. And you're putting this into your subconscious. You can't fix roots at the conscious level alone. The harvest is above the ground. The planting is below. And that's why this inner work matters. That's why identity matters. Again, the field of dreams, I was talking about that. My dad's painting. It makes me think of the field from Rumi, the quantum field. Nikola Tesla says, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Frequency is a field. So in the movie, The Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. Build it inside, internal. But also I've learned if you build it, they won't come. They can't come if they don't know. So if you build it, you have to tell them. But anyway, I'm kind of going off path a little bit. If you plant, you then have to show up to the field. You have to tend to it. You have to do the rest. So when I painted that Field of Dreams painting for my dad, it was about forgiveness, the tesseraction of forgiveness, about, again, that quote that I heard in the movie before I even named it. I was responding to a whisper that the movie was naming in my life. It's just so surreal. Ease his pain. It reminds me of a lyric I wrote in a song 25 years ago. Children have better eyes with which to see the world. They look to the sea and sky and fly above our world. And grown men have bitter eyes, blinded by the pain of dreams they never actualized and a hurt they can't explain. My dad had that pain. He had dreams he never actualized. As he threw those baseballs at me when I was a child, screaming at me not to be afraid. That was part of his pain, but I broke the chain. I forgave. Forgiveness is a decision, a tesseraction. Gratitude is a decision, a tesseraction. Love is a decision, a tesseraction. Viktor Frankl says, we decide between stimulus and response. That painting became a totem. And it's after my dad passed August 27, 2024, it went to my brother, and he's had it actually before that because my dad said he wanted to give it to him before he passed. But, you know, people have tried to buy that original for large sums of money, but never is it to be sold, not while it's in the family, because it's priceless. So the irony is about all of this and the crystal and why it's coming to mind is I had my painting laser engraved inside of a crystal. It now exists inside an actual crystal. And technology has become this spiritual allegory. And if you want to buy that crystal, there's one piece. It costs $108,000. That's what I have it priced at. That crystal Field of Dreams, if one person wants to buy it ever in the history of humanity to get it from me, it's $108,000. And that's my harvest. And someone will buy it. Maybe not even in my lifetime, but they will. Because the value isn't in pigment of the paint on the canvas. It's seed time and harvest. It's tears, it's cycles, it's forgiveness. It's having a video of the last ball my dad ever threw to me. It's the first pitch he threw out at Four Winds Field as the last ball he'd ever throw from a field of dreams that he imagined he would do as a boy. It's breaking the chains. It's me raising money for the Special Olympics. It's a symbol of abundance taken from abundance and abundance still remaining. But it's all a field. And we got the seed now, right? The seed has been underground in the dark for cycles, for seasons, through seasons of rain. And that rain reflects our sadness, and our turmoil is in the sweat and the blood of toil. We're there, but it's also has to go through the hope of sunny days. It has to have that warmth and the growth and the idea that the harvest is on the other end. But all of it, we can't see. We can't see what's happening. It's underneath the surface. But it's in the field. We've talked a lot here, and you'll read about the quantum field and this notion of the observer effect. And that's what we're talking about, this crystalline choice of coming back to your crop. We're going to harvest abundance, and it's there. It's drawing this blossom up from a broken shell, a broken seed that moves upward through the darkness to eventually show us evidence of our belief through the cycles. But before it reaches the surface, if you're in doubt, if you're questioning, if you don't understand the cycle of seed time and harvest, when you have a rainy day, you're like, oh man, this is terrible. But the rain is part of the process. It's necessary. That's why when I say gratitude is a decision, not a feeling, we don't feel great in the rain. We feel down. You know, it's like it's got a dampering effect on us, but we can be grateful for what the rain does to nourish the thirst of this seed, this dream, this vision. But you have to, if you don't know the cycle, then it can be very tempting to either want to dig it up, to dig up the seed to see if it's growing, or to feel like, man, nothing's going right in my life right now. I haven't seen the sun. I've been in this winter. All of it just seems like gloom and doom. And that's where so many of these, again, charlatans or snake oil salesmen with law of attraction, they either miss the point or they take advantage of people not knowing about the cycles of the seasons. Because we're not talking about hocus pocus, a guy in the clouds outside of us that we're attracting. We're talking about quantum belief. We're talking about law. We're talking about the belief in the laws of reciprocity. That's what seed time and harvest is. You reap and you will sow, you knock and the door will be answered. The harvest will come after the season. But if you don't know about the seasons, you might just abandon your dream, your seed, or dig down to where you planted your vision because you lack faith. You can't go and check on it. You just have to know that here, when we tend to our crop, it will grow. Again, law of attraction, hocus pocus, though, says that you don't have to go back out to the field, or you don't have to water it, that you don't have to till the land, that you don't even have to dig into the ground to plant the seed and get your hands dirty. But if you go down, you dig it out, you destroy your crop, destroy your seed, you break the process. You kill the flowering of your dream. And with your seed in the ground, like, you can't pull it out to show people. That's the whole point. That's why it's in the subconscious, it's in the dark. But we use quantum observation to show up to our field. And there are going to be detractors. People who are naysayers who try and cut down your dream, say no, but you know there's a harvest. They'll laugh at you. You say, oh, that's funny. That's cute. But if you know the cycles, if you know the law, you know that as you reap, you will sow. So you can't just say, I want a Lamborghini, and I'm going to have a Lamborghini. Those are different prescriptions. Those are different frames. I'm talking about manifestation as a vision of truth, of showing up because of your crystalline farmer. You're a crystal farmer. I like that. And eventually we get that little peeking evidence of life. It was born of our beliefs, born of our dream, born of our vision of abundance of the harvest. But it was because we toiled. But we loved what we did as we toiled. We planted the seed and we were patient and we believed in the law of attraction, the law that the universe shows of seed time and harvest. We let it grow. We let it continue through the cycles of our life. But you can't pull the crop too soon. And we can't let the Lamborghini magic try to hypnotize us. We have to be patient. We have to wait. Sometimes there's more tears to fall, more sweat to fall, more rain, more sun, more cycles. But eventually, we reach the autumn. We reach the golden harvest, and we're able to pull the crop of our vision. And then we can say, this is because I manifested it. I manifested it. I cultivated it. I farmed it. It came from inside of me, inside of this universe that I live in, that I planted these seeds. And so this painting that I did for my dad was a tesseraction, the field of dreams. And then before he passed, my dad wanted to transfer that energy to him. So it's been in his house. But that field of energy, of forgiveness, it continues to move. And I sold copies of it as prints. They're like mini totems, but people want the token. They want the main token. They want that energy because it's embedded in the tesseraction. And the original canvas isn't for sale, but now I have the crystal. This crystal of that experience. It's a prism. Again, things don't happen to us. They happen through us. Not even for us. They happen through us. They don't happen to us. They happen through us. We're the prism. We're the crystal that happened through me. My experience with my dad, the forgiveness, all of it that had to happen as a tesseraction. That's what that crystal of my field of dreams crystal is. It's a tesseraction. The prism of what happens changes through us, the experience. And now my field of dreams painting exists in an actual crystal as an allegory for spiritual technology, the I amness. The harvest is the I am. With my dad, I had to cry those tears. That's a season. After his passing, we even cried all of those tears. But we believe in the dream coming true. After the suns and the cycles of the seasons, the Seedtime and Harvest, law of abundance, it brings us to the autumn. And even if it's not in my lifetime, it will move because it's energy moving. And money even is just energy changing forms. Time, focus, patience, pressure. It's like a diamond that compresses under the earth. Again, time and pressure is what it takes to create a diamond. And that's what this crystal is in my life as an art piece. This artifact, this portal, this totem, it's a symbol of forgiveness and love. It's a tesseraction. It's a diamond. $108,000 for it, that's a steal. It's a deal if you get it at that price. Because you can't articulate or fake the seed time and harvest, the cycles that it took to create that piece beyond the pigment. And again, it reminds me, as much as I love the Field of Dreams movie, and I've articulated it through this experience with my dad, that whole idea of if you build it, they will come. That's kind of a mirror of some of the charlatanism of law of attraction. This idea that you just have to say it and it will happen. And it's used, I don't even think necessarily nefariously, but it's just incorrect. If you build it, they won't come. I've learned that. They have to know. They can't come if they don't know. So if you build it, as I was saying earlier, you still have to do the rest to get people to know. So then it goes right back into the seed time and harvest. It goes back into our planting, our toiling, our showing up. So if there's a person who's going to buy my $108,000 crystal, they're going to buy it, not just because I made it, or painted it, but because I've articulated this. So not unless I continue to show up to the field, to the dream, to the vision, to the abundance. I named it Field of Dreams because, again, I had that rolling through my head. If you paint it, they will come. I was responding to all of those subconscious whispers that Ray Kinsella is hearing in the movie. And it overlaid with my dad's vision from a little boy just being a diehard Cubs fan, and the abuse, the physical, emotional, verbal, all of it hitting at me, screaming at me, all of that stuff that we've talked about here. I talked about it earlier. It was the pain of a dream he never actualized. But for me, I would break the chain. It would be the son that forgave his father through a tesseraction, easing his pain. That pain transmuted into gold, alchemy, deciding to forgive, deciding to love unconditionally, deciding to ease his pain. My dad was a little boy trapped in a grown man's body. I broke that chain. That's why those prints, I was able to sell prints to donate to the Special Olympics that year for the polar plunge. I was Indiana's highest individual fundraiser. Because of donating all of my print sales from a single night, I raised more than anyone in the state of Indiana because of the cycle of love, the cycle of gravity, the law of attraction, all of it. I raised that through the pain. I transmuted the experience with my dad into that. And I was able to give my dad the honor to throw out the first pitch. It was Father's Day. I would say he had the honor to throw out the first pitch at the South Bend Cubs. And that was the last ball that he ever threw. And all of it was because of believing in the frequency, in the field. But if I didn't till the soil of my subconscious, the talk, if I didn't forgive, that forgiveness was a blade going into the soil. And it allowed me to change my whole life. And it continues to. It's a tesseraction. But it's about then the seeds that I plant. As above, so below. This is correlation. I can't plant deadly nightshade and expect to get apples. And what I'm planting into my subconscious is what I'm doing when I'm talking, when I'm interacting with people. So we have to be careful with what we do at the conscious level is our cultivation. That's our farming. And these roots are going to show the fruits of our thoughts, of our love. And we can't fix it only at the conscious level either, though. We start there, but we're here above the ground, and the harvest starts deep, way below. But once we harvest the crop, that's the result. We can't try and change it there at the surface level during our harvest. So being mindful of the subconscious, what's in our soil, we plant those seeds, they're going to come up. That's the law. The diamond, pressure, time, heat, patience, the darkness, all of it. We're going to manifest abundantly. There's going to be an autumn in your life, but just be ready for what the crops are. That's it. And if you truly believe in your vision, then it will take you to the soil. If you truly believe in your vision, you won't have to dig up to see if it's growing, because you'll feel it growing somewhere underneath. That's where I'm at. When I was 10 years old, I told my mom that I was going to go to the American Academy of Art in Chicago. I planted a seed. That's what I did. And if I keep tracing the roots and the fruits of those decisions, it leads me right to this moment to have this conversation with you. When I was a 10-year-old boy, I had a tesseraction, and that was deciding that I would go to the American Academy of Art, that I was going to be a creator, that I was going to be a deciding being, a human being. I'm a crystal farmer that knows there's a seed time and there's a harvest.
Seedtime and Harvest is law.
Perception is reality. Perspective shapes the world around you. I'm JJ Weinberg. This is my perspective.